Good evening. Namaskar to all of you. Ambassador, members of the community, I'm really very pleased to meet all of you this evening. As Ambassador mentioned, I'm here on my first visit as the Minister of External Affairs. It's not my first visit to Egypt though. I was here roughly about 15 years ago as a tourist. So I know a little bit of what he's saying. But it's today, of course, my objective is different. It is really to further our relationship, to meet my counterparts, to meet leaders of the Egyptian government. So what I'd like to do really is to share with you where in our assessment the relationship is, because you're all stakeholders in this relationship, and I think its progress and its betterment is something which is of natural interest to you. I came in here yesterday evening, and Ambassador was good enough to call some very senior Egyptians, I think 3 former foreign ministers, a number of other people who have long been associated with our relationship. So I began with the discussion with them in the evening yesterday. This morning, I of course paid homage to Mahatma Gandhi at the bust which has been installed close to Tahrir Square. Then I went to the Heliopolis Commonwealth War Graves Memorial, because a lot of our people are remembered there, and it is natural that we should honor their memory. It is something I generally do when I go abroad. And then, of course, I had my talks with my counterpart, Minister Sameh Shukri, in the morning. Afternoon, I had gone to meet Minister Ahmed Abul Gheit, who's the Secretary General of the League of Arab States. Tomorrow, I hope to call on His Excellency the President, do a meeting with the business community, perhaps do a little bit with the press, and then I go home. Now, in terms of where our relationship is, I would like you to all appreciate that there is today a very serious effort at upgrading our ties. And this is the 75th anniversary of our diplomatic relations. And my presence here, and preceded just a few weeks ago by our Defense Minister, Rajnath Singh ji, I think is a very strong political signal to Egypt that India definitely would like to raise the quality of the relationship. You all know that as political partners, we have a long history with this country, going back really to the 1950s. We have been among the more independent members of the international community, and there have been ups and downs in the world, but by and large we have kept to an independent course. And today, at a time when the world is quite polarized, when we see that in many ways there are compulsions and pressures of various kinds, it is important for us to reiterate the bonds of friendship between us, and to work together on big international issues. And in a sense, my discussions with Minister Shukri was aimed at doing that. I mentioned the visit of Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh ji because the defense and security aspect of our relationship is also moving forward. last 2 years, we've been doing some important Air Force exercises. We've had ship visits from India. And we really think it's possible. We have a history of defense industrial cooperation with Egypt. It's certainly something we believe could be revived to our mutual benefit. On the trade side, we actually had an exceptionally good year last year. Our trade today is in excess of $7 billion, $7.26 billion. It was a big jump, almost a 75% jump in trade. And it was a jump actually for us with the entire world. Last year's trade performance, export performance for India was the best ever in our history. And it was only natural that this was also reflected in respect of Egypt. Having said that, with trade, there will always be challenges. We will keep trying to improve market access. It is natural that from the Egyptian side also there will be similar concerns. And one of our understandings today is that both of us will try and see how do we find ways of removing trade barriers, of finding new domains and new areas to both export and import. In fact, one of the interesting developments which happened this year is, I don't know if it is for the first time, but suddenly after a very long time, Egypt has started importing wheat from India. So there are new possibilities, and we looked at areas like pharmaceuticals, where India is today very, very competitive, engineering goods, and again, the good thing with Egypt is that trade has been reasonably balanced, so there's an inclination on both sides to do more. The story with investments has also been good. I think many of you know it better than me, those of you who represent business enterprises working here. And I think we have good companies. I think they've done us proud in this country. From the Egyptian side, I heard very good, warm words about them. And I thank Indian businesses here, because you're not only advancing our national interests, but you're actually also shaping our image in this country, and that's something we very much appreciate. One subject which did come up today was the need for greater air connectivity. I am sure the community knows this better than someone like me who's visiting, but I had to change a plane to come here. I'd prefer next time to come directly. Again, with an open mind, we will examine that, because this is today really a decision that airlines have to make in India. We do a certain amount of training and capacity building with our Egyptian partners. Generally, we allot about 200 slots for training to Egypt under various programs of the government. In the last 15-20 years, we've had almost 1,500 Egyptian officials who have undergone some kind of exposure, exchanges, training in India, and this is very good, because it gives them an understanding about India and creates really a linkage which serves our relationship in very good stead. We also spoke about education, because today, under the national education policy, our universities are going out in a much more enthusiastic manner. I understand there have been already some agreements which private Indian universities have reached here. We look forward to the realization of that. But obviously there was particular interest in Egypt about getting one of our IITs, Indian Institutes of Technology, to set up a collaborative enterprise here. So I will go and convey that back to the Education Minister. Health was another area, and that too is very natural, because after COVID, all of us have become much more conscious about health challenges, about wellness. And again, we have a good foundation here. Egypt is one of the countries where we have long supplied vaccines. During COVID, we actually stood by each other. We sent vaccines, we sent medicines from Egypt during the Delta wave in India. They sent concentrators, they sent some medical kits. So we now really have to see whether on a more sustainable way can we create a business partnership which is centered around the pharma sector. Interestingly, there was some discussion today about developmental governance experiences that I think in Egypt you have an initiative called Haya Karima, Decent Life. And it's very similar to what we are trying to do in India, which is inclusive development, direct benefits to the vulnerable segments. And I shared with them how much really progress we have made, especially using digital delivery. So as you can see from the range of examples I give you, the relationship is good, the possibilities are greater, there is enthusiasm in India to explore it. I saw reciprocal interest in Egypt. Tomorrow, certainly, when I have the opportunity to call on the President, I will reiterate to him the strong personal commitment of our Prime Minister to growing this relationship. Now, the Ambassador, I think, also mentioned that we hope very much to strengthen our cooperation with Egypt in the global arena. We have a history there, but this year in December, we take over the chairship of the G20, which is among the more prestigious multilateral groupings in the world today. And it is the prerogative of the G20 chair to invite guests. So among the few countries that we have decided to invite to the G20 summit next year is Egypt. So we are very confident that this too will be taken as a signal of our commitment to strengthening and intensifying the relationship. So this broadly was, is a sense of where the India-Egypt relationship stands, what happened during my visit, what I hope to complete tomorrow. But having said that, I would like to also take the opportunity to share with you what is happening at home. Because as people who live abroad, you have a natural interest in the progress and well-being of your motherland. And as someone who spends time in India, who travels a lot in India, who's connected in many ways to developments on the ground, perhaps some of my perspectives and insights may be of interest to you. Now, very, very briefly, like every society in the world, we too were very deeply affected by the COVID pandemic, especially by the Delta wave. But perhaps what made us a little different was that a country which at the beginning of the pandemic had virtually no infrastructure to address it, which was struggling for ventilators, for PPEs, for the range of medicines which were required. We, as a country, as a society, as a people, we actually rose to that challenge. And what you saw in India was the creation of a public health infrastructure in response to the COVID, which has actually been remarkable. Now, I don't say this, as a, just as a minister coming out to make a statement to community. As I am a member of parliament from Gujarat, and like all members of parliament, we have some area for which we have responsibility. I look at the region, at the district with which I have the closest association, and I actually see how much from the district hospital to the primary health center, how much has changed in this period. And when you look at not just the medical response, the public health response to the COVID, but actually to the vaccination program, I would impress on you that this has been done on a scale and an efficiency that is actually very commendable, because one part of it is that unlike many other situations of global health challenges where there were vaccines or medicines, and somewhere along the way our turn also came in the queue. This time we were among the earliest to vaccinate. We did it mainly because we were ourselves producers of vaccine. So there were made in India vaccines. There were even invented in India vaccines, of which I was one of the people who took it. And most important, there was the platform to administer vaccines on a massive scale. And this is very important because a lot of countries have struggled with having vaccines but not having the organization to administer the vaccine. So the first big takeaway which I would like you to appreciate is that we went through really an enormous trial and tribulation, but I think the society came together. We had the leadership of the Prime Minister in facing up to this challenge. There was delivery on the ground. The system responded to it. And as a result today, when still a number of societies are struggling to come out of the COVID situation, as someone who travels a lot in the world, I can tell you that our return to normalcy has been much faster, much deeper in a way than many other societies. The second aspect of this actually relates to the transformation in governance. Very, very early, in the COVID challenge happened. This was around the time we were going for the lockdown in 2020. At one of the cabinet meetings, Prime Minister actually told all of us, saying, and there were a group of us who were also tasked, ministers who were tasked to deal with the COVID on a regular basis. And he reminded us that 100 years ago when the Spanish flu hit the world, and it hit India very badly at that time, more people died in India of hunger than they died of the flu. And he was very determined that that should not happen again. So what happened from 2020 onwards was actually a massive effort at creating a social safety net across the country. And the social safety net was actually done on the basis of a digital backbone. That is, the Aadhaar system was really used to directly transfer benefits to people. And today I can say with a great deal of pride that the scale on which we did this, when I go abroad and talk to other countries, they cannot actually believe that this kind of numbers are possible. That we could, week after week, ensure that 800 million people, 60% of the country was getting rations from the government. That more than 400 million people were actually getting money paid into the bank accounts. And this was happening because in his first tenure, actually, Prime Minister had pushed everybody to open bank accounts. People didn't understand at that time why he was encouraging them to do that. But the fact that our country today is so massively banked that, that you can pick individuals using Aadhaar numbers and move the money. So one part of it was the actual medical treatment, the vaccination, but the other part of it was to make sure that people were fed, nobody went hungry, that people had money. So a lot of the anxieties and worries which you would have read about, saying there's a lockdown, people are going back home, what will happen to them, they don't have jobs, and all of these were legitimate. I mean, these were real concerns. If we have come through that, which we have, a part of the reason for that is this huge social safety initiatives that we have been able to actually get done on the ground. Some of you may have read, I think it was 2 days ago, one of the I think it was the deputy managing director of the IMF. He has actually spoken about how effective and the scale with which India has been able to do what we call direct benefit transfer. And I mentioned this to you because you have to understand what it means for governance in our country. One of our big problems, this was actually not a story, but it's a established fact. Over many decades, it was said that if 100 rupees leaves Delhi, only 10 rupees goes finally to the beneficiary. This time around, because it was digital, you actually had a system of benefiting the public without anything being lost in transmission. And that is an enormous, it's a revolution actually in the quality of governance. But I am, stressing that in the context of COVID. Today, yes, there is still COVID. We can never let our guard down. But the fact is, we've also managed to put a lot of it behind us. And we are carrying on extrapolating those lessons, taking it into other domains of delivery and governance as well. So if you see the changes, and I say this as changes in villages and small towns in India, you would be reading about how rail lines are being built or roads are being built. But the really big change you can see is actually today in the creation of a health coverage system, and a health coverage system which is moving into hundreds of millions, precisely because it has a digital backbone. We are talking of a pension system, multiple schemes of giving pension. Again, for a country for whom pension was something which was urban, which was actually something which a very small segment of people got from their employers. Today it has actually become a public expectation, a public right almost. And you see, if you look at the beneficiaries of this, you're again looking at hundreds of millions. There are programs for home ownership in the home ownership Gramin Awas Yojana, as well as the urban version of that, where if you look at the number of houses which have already been given to people in last few years, it's 25 million houses. And 25 million houses means that 5 people a family, more than 100 million people who are getting houses. So the picture I want to present to you is actually today a society where remarkable changes are happening on the ground. Changes where what perhaps 10 years ago, people expected at the end of my life I will get a house. I hope I work hard enough so that my children are educated. Or that, maybe if I'm lucky, I will get a good employer who will give health coverage. So these were aspirations which were almost dreams for people. Today, those are actually getting to be achievable rights, which people are realizing in a matter of years, months or years, not as end of lifetime or next lifetime, or I hope my children get it. So when we look at the direction of the country today, we are in many ways on a very, very solid footing. We have come through the COVID. We also responded financially, fiscally to the COVID in a way in which it was very responsible. We did not incur unnecessary expenditure. There was a discipline which was maintained in public spending even while we were responding. We actually used this period to also carry out some big reforms, banking reforms, labor reforms, education reforms. So it is very natural today that coming out of that difficult period, we are a major economy, major polity that whose prospects look good. We are quite confident, even though there are big challenges for the global economy, especially coming out of Ukraine, that we will be able to absorb these challenges, that the growth path, growth trajectory of the country will remain very strong. And as we navigate the world, and it's something which I have a particular responsibility for, I can see that our progress and our achievement is recognized by other countries. Even here in Egypt, reading between the lines, I could sense that the feeling was, yes, we are dealing with a country which has faced big challenges in a very, very successful way. So I definitely want to share with you the feeling that there is a confidence in India today, that we believe that the path of progress, of modernization, of transforming the country, of taking it really to the higher level, these are all very much doable. The mood at home is quite optimistic. It is not to say we don't have our challenges. We will always have our challenges. We are still a developing country, but there is a sense of purpose today in India. And there is a sense of purpose. There is a sense of confidence that we have come through a very, very difficult period. And in all of this, of course, the support that we have received from the Indian community abroad is something which I would certainly like to recognize. I can tell you those very difficult days last year, probably one of the most encouraging parts of it was this huge outpouring of both good wishes and practical support that we got from so many community organizations and individuals. And on our part too, we ensured that during COVID, Indians who were stuck outside in some form, could be students, could be professionals, could be seafarers, we made what was really an unprecedented effort to bring many of them back home. So this is an India today capable of doing big things, which has proven that it can rise to challenges. So it's that sense of today determination and resilience that I share with you. I once again thank you, Ambassador, for the initiative in getting together the community and its representatives out here. And I wish you all the best in your professional, individual, family endeavors. And what I can assure you is that we run a foreign policy today which naturally is development centric, which is security centric, but most of all it is people centric. So all of you are always in our thoughts, and please be assured that just like your good wishes are with us, our support is with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable insights with us. It is indeed a privilege to listen to you. Ladies and gentlemen, now the floor is open for interaction. So EM will be taking a few questions from the community members. We may start with Mrs. Deepti Singh.
Namaskar, good evening, Dr. Jaishankar, Dr. Ambassador, and all the guests here. I am Deepti Singh, President of Indian Community Association of Egypt. I'm an engineer and a public speaker too. I'm also co-founder of Africa Studies Center and a general secretary of that, which highlights the riches of Africa. It's my utmost pleasure, sir, to welcome you on this platform. Indian Community Association was formed more than 3 decades ago and has been working as a non-profit organization so far. We are, as Mr. Ambassador mentioned, we are having a strong, impactful presence of more than 3,000 Indians, including CEOs of big companies and business people and working laborers as well. It was quite heartening to know about the new possibilities you mentioned about the India-Egypt trades, and you gave us a great picture of remarkable changes in society. Thank you very much, sir. Indian Community Association is always striving to have a community interaction, which includes Indians and Egyptians, and being fluent, most of us, being fluent myself in Arabic helps us to know Egypt and India very well. So, and being a community, we are working towards lots of events, and also whenever there is a call from Bharatma, we are there to share our knowledge, seva or business, anything, whatever has been asked for. For that, ICA has been awarded by Pravasi Bharatiya Samman a couple of years back. Sir, my question to you is, India have always been very independent approach towards our foreign policies. Especially these days, we are quite vocal about it. How much or how are we preparing ourselves towards the Atmanirbhar Bharat to face the challenges and hurdles coming from powerful countries? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you asked the question because it was not something I addressed in my remarks. Look, there were many lessons from COVID. One of the lessons from COVID was how dependent we were for very basic things on other countries. And what happens if for some reason that supply chain doesn't work. Now, in the case of COVID, the supply chain didn't work because countries literally shut down when COVID happened. So different, industries, different businesses felt the impact. And the takeaway was that a country as big as India, where so many people, their livelihood, their lives sometimes depend on keeping it going. We have to find more effective ways of ensuring that they are not left vulnerable. Now, this was COVID. Today, we are seeing that there is a possibility of disruptions because of conflict. There's a conflict in Ukraine, and there are shortages of food, there are problems with energy, there are difficulties with fertilizer. We were big importers of cooking oil, from sunflower oil from Ukraine. There was equipment, our railways, for example, was importing stuff from there. So all these are lessons to us that we cannot, a big society like India which has such a large responsibility and such a big segment of people who are vulnerable to even small changes in their livelihood, we have to find ways of protecting them better, of ensuring that their lives are not unnecessarily risked. And for that, it is all the more important that we build capacities at home. Even otherwise, I would say a country like India must build deep strengths and capacities. But recent experiences have only strengthened that feeling. And we definitely, I think the Atmanirbhar Bharat sentiment has got stronger push. It is not just a sentiment, it is taking place at a practical level. There are schemes today to encourage investment in India in different specified domains. It's called Production Linked Incentive Scheme. There are programs which are designed to spur innovation and encourage startups in the country. So we would definitely hope to see a much more self-reliant and a much more resilient India in the coming years. That is an important national objective.
Mr. Amarnath Nas.
Dr. Jaishankar ji, namaskar. मैं अमरनाथ दास, I'm with the World Health Organization, WHO, and I'm the regional head for the compliance and the risk for the entire MENA region. I'm really very happy to hear you, sir, that the way that you have been elaborating, especially the organization that I've been working, and I have seen actually those things coming actually. So as an Indian, I'm really proud the development that India has done. No doubt that India is now emerging as a global leader. Last 8 years, India has done extremely great work in bringing, all the pharmaceutical, the industries, and also if world is thinking about pharmacy, they are coming to India and all. And again, as you have alluded that Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, with his leadership, not only just we have shown the world that how with such a big population we have managed so effectively the COVID, and how we developed our health system in India, but we supported the world as well. So this was really acknowledged at various levels. Maybe my question to you, Dr. Jaishankar, is now maybe I'm sure that you must be thinking, or the government of India must be planning to take India to the next level. If someone is thinking about health, how we can make India as the health hub? So maybe I'm sure that, you can still explain, because you talked about with the positive news, there are still a lot of challenges as well. So if you can just allude maybe some of other points that how India is going to become the health hub. Thank you, sir.
Health hub. Health hub is a very strong term. I think our challenges are broader in a way, because the challenges at different levels. We are, interestingly, a health hub for many countries. People would be surprised at the number of foreigners who visit India for medical purposes. Not just in our immediate neighborhood, from the Gulf, from East Africa, from Central Asia. I have visibility of it, because as a foreign minister, for us, we see the visas, we see the requests from them for easy travel. The idea that India can offer quality care on competitive terms for a fairly substantial number of people, that is there. I think I now see the prospect of Indian medical, hospitals and other medical institutions actually going out of India more as a business, and some of it is happening, sometimes in collaboration with other countries. So that is one part of the hub answer. The other part of the hub answer is actually the pharma, the pharmacy of the world answer. You know, this was not the first pandemic, it's not the last pandemic. And it's not only pandemics. What COVID has done in India, it has done across the world. Everybody today is much more health conscious. That many things which people would have shrugged their shoulders and say, well, these things happen. Today, people are not prepared to be fatalistic about it. They want an active response. They have expectations of their governments. And we have shown here, again, I'm giving you not here a health perspective, but a foreign policy perspective. I cannot tell you the goodwill in the world today that while we were taking care of our own vaccinations, we also had the largeness of the heart to spare it for other people. It wasn't just the supply. It was the sentiment that, you could actually even think about it. And, it's interesting. If you go, there are islands in the Caribbean, in Pacific, in parts of Africa, where actually vaccines were made much closer to them. True. But they didn't get the vaccines from those centers. They actually got it from us. And we saw also the difficult side of the world. There were countries who stockpiled vaccines at that time, who sometimes had stockpiles which were multiple size of their population. So that also happened. So I would say our reputation as the pharmacy of the world also has grown. Openness, to looking at Indian produce, made in India, or produced by Indian company medicines has grown. That is the second part of the hub. But there is an underlying challenge, and the challenge is in our own society, that how do we make health access a universal right? And the answer to that is digital. That if you have, our resources are not going to grow dramatically in the short term. So what digital does is it actually allows you an optimization, that the same resources are utilized by so many more people because there is a digital efficiency, which comes, that the number of patients are better organized. The services move in a much more organized way. The medicines are more rationally distributed. And there are some very interesting schemes. I mean, Prime Minister, for example, has pushed the idea of, generic medicine pharmacy. Now, that has lowered the cost of medicines for people. And a lot of us actually go around advocating to people, saying, please use these Jan Aushadhi pharmacies, that they are affordable for you. So we have to today scale up health coverage in India. So the Ayushman Bharat initiative, Jan Arogya initiative have to be taken across the country in a very, very effective way. I would say 5 years ago, many of us would say it's a great idea. I hope, 10 saal mein ho jayega. Today, I think people feel, look at what we have done in last 2 years. This timeline can be crunched. So for me, the big jump would be if we can actually institute a system of universal or near universal health coverage at home.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Zahir Shah.
Good evening, Your Excellency, Ambassador. I am by profession an executive who has spent a lot of years with multinational companies, of which the last 25 years or so have been in Egypt. I just wish to bring to the notice of the Honorable Minister 2 areas where I feel the Indian community has contributed a lot in terms of development in India. One of the areas is fairly well known and the other is not. The area which I feel is not very well known is that the role that Indian managers have played in Egypt in the upliftment and development of local talent in the corporate sector. In the 1990s, when I first came here, most of the Indian expats were CEOs of manufacturing companies or banks. And one of the reasons why we were brought to India was not only to help the Egyptian companies operating here to do well, but also because Egypt lacked a second line of local managers who could run those companies. So our big objective was not only to make our companies successful, but also was to train the second line. And I think that a lot of effort went into this, and it has proved to be very successful, because today a lot of the spots which were earlier occupied by Indian expats or expats from other countries have been taken over by the Egyptians. So development of corporate manpower, I think, is an objective which the Indian community here has fulfilled very well. The second major area where India has contributed a lot is in helping Egypt to become a major player in the ready-made garment industry in the world. Today, ready-made garments is the single largest manufacturing sector in Egypt. And Indian investment, no doubt, has played a large part in it. But more than that, it is the Indian manpower that came in, whether they were the CEOs of the companies or whether it was the ordinary workers who came in. Because those workers who came in from India to work in these organizations raised the bar in terms of productivity and in terms of work ethic for the Indian workers. And I think that Egyptians, both the managers and the workers, learned a fair lot from that. I mean, I feel these are the two major contributions that we have made. If I can take the liberty, sir, I would like to say that on behalf of all of us, that it's always been a pleasure to hear you expound on Indian foreign policy with a clarity and a forthrightness with which we have never seen in the future and we don't expect. So when you speak, sir, let me say that you do us proud.
Thank you. May I make a remark on what you said? You know, I've been in this business a long time, and we weren't so well regarded 45 years ago when I started out. And you know, it's natural, we are a much bigger economy today. Our influence is more, our capability is more. But when I reflect, which I do often, you know, how does the world see us, and why does the world see us in a particular way? I often recall hearing about it from actually an American politician who told me that, you know, nobody really thinks of foreign countries seriously until you meet somebody from that country, something very distant. Now, this was actually American politicians from the deep south, you know, where traditionally it was not so easy for us to be well regarded. His point to me was, today, you know, whether it's my teacher, my lawyer, my chartered accountant, my doctor, most of all my doctor, when I see Indians there, for me, I now put a face. So India now means a face to that person. It means a relationship to that person. You'd be surprised how often, you know, I hear from either someone, you know, similar to me, or sometimes from, people from the other walks of life, they always give you a name. They will say, India is a great country. By the way, do you know so and so? Because they are linking a country and a person. So when we speak today of the Indian diaspora, the approximately 34 million people of Indian origin or Indian nationality who live abroad, those 34 million people, through their activities, their successes, their relationship, their contribution, have actually changed the perception of India as much as Indians at home have done themselves. So for me, I think I've heard from the Prime Minister, he feels it very deeply as well, because in his own travels, he's pretty much come to the conclusion which I'm sharing with you, that the role of the diaspora in through their success in shaping our image, in shaping the perception of India, this is something which is actually very, very profound, and is something to which actually the country is grateful to all of you.
Thank you, sir. May I throw one question, which I know I expect will be answered like you normally do, very clearly and in great with great forthrightness. Sir, in view of the multi-polar world which is evolving, do you feel that the non-aligned movement is relevant to the world now or not?
It's something which Minister Shokri and I discussed today, and we spoke about it at a press conference also. Look, there is such a thing as a non-aligned group, formally. There are countries who are members of it, they meet, there's a chairman, there's a structure which goes on. But the fact is, it was a group which started in a very different era. It had a context. Today, without in any way diminishing it, I would say it's necessary for independent-minded countries to actually speak their mind, to seek to shape and influence the direction in which the world is going, because the world is getting very polarized, and it's a double polarization. It's a east-west polarization, but it is also a north-south polarization. That the richer countries, the more developed countries, they are not fully grasping how much the poorer countries are being hurt by what is happening in the world. So it's a very stressful, it's a very unhappy world today. Countries are struggling, and in this, those who have the confidence, the experience, the capability to speak out, it's important that they do, that they don't go with the tide, so to speak. And to ensure that, I think voices of reason, of sanity, of sobriety are needed at this point of time. Certainly, I see India as such a voice. And to the extent there are other countries with a similar bent of mind and who also would like to, think and act in a similar manner, I think it would be a very good thing.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ashish Walia.
Thank you very much. Good evening, His Excellency. Good evening to all. My name is Ashish Walia, and I'm wearing two hats tonight. One is that as a chairman of Indian Community Association, and second as an Indian businessman in Egypt. Sir, I came to Egypt in 2006 as a representative for an Indian company called Larsen Toubro. And thereafter, I seized an opportunity to become an entrepreneur. I started my own manufacturing. And today I run a manufacturing business between India and Egypt and exporting to Europe and Africa. That is about me. And sir, you are a career diplomat. You had been a great...
I was.
Yes. You were a career diplomat. You were a great ambassador of India to several very important nations of our country. You were a legendary foreign secretary. And today you are making all of us proud by being very assertive and presenting a new image of India, which is a very assertive and strong image of India. So my first part of the question is, what is your message for global Indian professionals? That'll be my first. And the second one, which is linked to it, sir, 2 weeks ago, you were in US. From there, you traveled to Australia and then New Zealand. And in between, you did Gujarat, and today you are here. Such a hectic schedule. If I have to travel from here to Canada, I start preparing weeks ago, and I take like a couple of days to recover from that. How do you manage that? What is the secret, what is the mantra of your physical fitness, which we all can learn from you? So these are my two questions. The first one for the global Indian professional, and second for physical fitness, sir.
What can I say? Look, honestly, it's not, I don't think I'm being assertive. What often happens, to be very honest with you, is you end up in situations where others try to pressurize you or push you or, in a sense, leave you with no choice but to express your views with a certain degree of forcefulness. I still believe that at the end of the day, it's important to explain yourself. That's my business, to reason with people, to negotiate with people. But if at times, there's a lack of fairness in which your position is portrayed, I don't think we should let that pass. We're not doing justice to ourselves if you do that. So I know sometimes it ends up in a certain way. That's really not me. It's the context, you can say. But as a country, it is important for us to be clear in the projection of our interests, to be articulate in explaining why we are doing or taking the positions that we are doing, and I would hope to do it in as congenial and harmonious a manner as the situation would permit. On the travel, look, you end up sometimes doing these things, and I'm sure I would feel tired if I had a chance to catch my breath. But the pace of life keeps you going. So maybe if you slow down, you will feel it. So far, that that has not happened. But I keep fingers crossed. I think if you are generally at peace with yourself and you have good colleagues to work with, and if you have a I would say something which drives your a sense of mission, you can say, I think it keeps you going.
Thank you, sir. My best wishes for you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you everyone for this fruitful interaction. I regret we have to close the interactive session because considering the paucity of time. Sir, the Indian Community Association of Egypt would like to present to you a memento. Members of ICAE may please come on the stage to present the same.
Can I ask one question?
Mike, please.
Just one question. So I'm asking on behalf of everybody, and all want to know, when will you advise the Prime Minister to visit Egypt?
When will I?
Advise the Prime Minister to visit here.
He doesn't need my advice. I mean, the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister is actually, he has very good personal relationship with President Sisi. I know that he's been wanting to visit for some time. It's just one of those situations. Partly, the COVID has come and interrupted travel schedules, but I can assure you it's very much on his mind. And from on my side, he will only get more further motivation. So let's see.
We only hope your third time lucky, sir. And direct flight to Delhi starts soon. Because before you, two of the other leaders had come and they did try their best for a direct flight. But I hope you bring us good luck and we have a direct flight soon.
Well, airlines in India are now completely privatized. So I'm sure if the airlines see a market, which I understand there is, but again, look, I assure you, I'm very much an advocate of this relationship because I see its value. I see its value, and I'm pretty confident. If the airlines think the right way, it will happen.